Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Amy Lloyd. I am a trauma recovery coach and accredited certified complex trauma specialist trainer and mentor, helping entrepreneurs bridge the gap between personal and professional development so that they can then create their dream lives and grow thriving businesses. Today, I want to talk about a topic that resonates deeply with many of us: why we keep repeating the same relationship mistakes, why we keep ending up with partners who make us feel ashamed, and most importantly, how to break free from this cycle. Have you ever found yourself in yet another relationship where you feel belittled, unworthy, maybe even riddled with shame over every little thing? Does it feel like you keep making the same relationship mistake over and over again, almost like it's like Groundhog's Day, right? Have you seen the movie? It's like you're living the same relationship over and over again with maybe with just different people. Like, you know, you're doing it on some level, but you never quite see it coming and you always end up getting hurt. Or it could be that you became aware of the patterns and here you are doing it differently. You've broken the patterns that had kept you trapped in the past. And this relationship is different. And it's not until years into the relationship, or it could be even after the relationship ends, that in retrospect, you realize, oh, actually, I was following a lot of those same patterns that I thought I had gotten out of. The latest relationship was just different enough that you genuinely thought it was different, that the person that you were with was different, that you were different. Yet here you sit now realizing it was just more of the same. It was just the pig wearing a different shade of lipstick. Have you ever asked, why do I keep making these decisions? Why didn't I learn the first 100 times? Why couldn't I see that this was just the same old crap again and again and again? This is a common and painful pattern that many of us go through. And what I know for sure is that people with complex trauma, or what is also known as complex PTSD or CPTSD, is that we're not trying to hurt ourselves. We repeat these patterns that are not healthy for us because it's all we know. These can be referred to as blind spot behaviors. We walk right into the fire, unable to see the flame. You're not being an idiot. You're not stupid. You're not blind. It is you showing common, normal signs, adult signs of early trauma. That is what unhealed childhood trauma, or CPTSD, does to a person. You are normal. Hear that. You are normal. These behaviors are normal reactions experienced by those of us who grew up in abnormal situations or in abnormal circumstances. It could be that your parents had an abusive relationship with each other when you were growing up. Maybe they still do. Or you could have been emotionally neglected as a child. You could have been abused physically, sexually, verbally, emotionally. There's a lot of different forms of abuse. Or you could have been traumatized in some other way. Many kids, or even kids that come from healthy enough families, experience trauma. It can happen at school or just out in the world anywhere. It can happen with friends. Neglect and abuse are not the only things that create trauma. You see, trauma wounds are created anytime our nervous system feels overwhelmed. And we all have felt overwhelmed, meaning that we all experience trauma. We all carry trauma wounds. It's not something that only happens to other people. It's a normal function of our nervous system to events that just feel beyond our ability to deal with at the time. As children, though, we have specific developmental needs, and when one or more of those needs are not met consistently enough, we will suffer trauma, and that impacts our adult lives as well. So today, we'll explore why you keep making some of the same relationship mistakes, why you keep ending up with partners who make you feel ashamed of who you are, and most importantly, how you can break free. So let's start with the root. These patterns stem from unresolved trauma. When we grew up in toxic environments or experienced trauma from any situation, that trauma shapes the way that we see ourselves and the way we see others. It shapes our entire worldview. It influences our behaviors about what we think we deserve in a relationship. And we carry these unhealed wounds. When we carry these unhealed wounds, we unconsciously will seek out partners who reflect our internalized shame and self-doubt. If you grew up in an environment where you were made to feel unworthy in any way, those feelings can become a familiar comfort zone, even though they are painful. We tend to gravitate towards what feels familiar to us, even when it hurts, because it's all we know. And because it's all we know how to navigate it, right? What we fear the most is what we don't know, because we have no experience navigating those new things. We have no experience navigating what healthy love and tenderness feel like. In fact, we can have a tendency to run from healthy expressions of love because they feel so different than anything we have ever known or experienced, and so they feel unsafe. Another aspect to consider is something called love bombing. If you're not familiar with the term, it's when someone lavishes you with excessive or disproportionate love, affection, attention to manipulate you in some way in an effort to get what they want. This is almost always done subconsciously, and you may have done it yourself. I think that many of us engage in many different forms of trauma responses, such as love bombing, and we have no idea when we're doing it or when we're on the receiving end. It can be really hard to recognize and challenging to realize when it's being done to us, because we love so genuinely and so deeply, and we want that kind of love in return. Love bombing might look like excessive compliments, elaborate gift giving or doing, or wanting all of your time and attention in a way that feels loving and pampering. Maybe you meet someone who pursues you enthusiastically, and for weeks and weeks, you play this little game of cat and mouse with them, asking you out repeatedly, and you repeatedly saying you're not interested. But they're so persistent. At some point, maybe you start to doubt yourself and you think, am I being mean? Am I writing this person off so too quickly? He or they are such a nice person, and here they are pursuing me and wanting to go out with me and doing the kindest things. What is wrong with me? Why don't I give this person a chance? So you do. And you're so glad you did, because it turns out that they're amazing, even though within a few weeks, or eventually though, within a few weeks, or it could be even longer, it could be later, months into a marriage, suddenly they begin one day to lose interest, and maybe they start mistreating you in little ways that seem to grow over time. Maybe they start talking down to you. They can be insulting. They can insult your intelligence. They can become maybe short-tempered over time. They might insult even how you look, just little nitpicky things that just whittle away at you. And they can become so disrespectful and cold, and even blaming you for their feelings and emotions. You're left feeling hurt and confused because they so enthusiastically pursued you, and they were so sweet and kind and loving. And now all you get from them in the form of love and affection are crumbs, and even that only on their terms. Or imagine a spouse that doesn't help around the house, doesn't take care of the kids, at least not much, doesn't properly provide for the family. Yet when they learn that you are going to be receiving a bonus at work, all of a sudden they start coming home, they start helping out around the house, they start taking care of the kids and taking care of these little chores that have just piled up over time. And suddenly they're super mom or dad, they're super husband or wife, and they keep it up. But then when the money comes in, they have you feeling like, and by this point, they have you feeling like they are the person that you have always desired. They are the person you thought you were marrying to begin with. They're honoring you, they're cherishing you and your marriage and the children. You finally feel that you've come together as a couple. So you lovingly lean in, trusting them more and more and more because you have needed that connection for so long. You've needed it for so long, and now here it is. It's finally arrived. And in that trust, you agree to using the money on things that they have always wanted rather than on things that maybe the family needs, which is what you had originally planned on. Maybe your original thoughts for this bonus was a new roof, and they start talking about needing equipment to start a new business. It feels kind of left field, maybe. They've never talked about a business before. In fact, they maybe never seen big projects through to the end before, but all of a sudden, this is urgent. It's for the family, and they paint this picture of what life will be like once their business takes off. Not only can you get that new roof, but a new car and family vacations, and the kids can go to that camp they've talked about. And guess what? Their startup capital just so happens to be the exact same amount as your bonus. Look, honey, it's serendipitous. The worst part, though, is that once the money is spent, nothing ever happens with the business. They invested all of the money, it's gone, but they did not invest all of their time or effort, and the whole project languishes. Slowly but surely, it's like going back in time. They neglect the home, the kids, the marriage, feeding you excuses as to why the business is a failure. It's not their fault. It could be they go so far as to even somehow make it your fault. That's love bombing. And that's not an extreme version. That's a real scenario that I just shared with you. Scenarios like this are actually quite common. It's unhealed people attracting other unhealed people. We all develop our own ways of coping, not knowing that we have these unhealed wounds. It's natural we naturally gravitate to people who seem to just get us and whose trauma responses play off of our trauma responses and vice versa. If you have a trauma response that has you believing that you don't deserve healthy boundaries, then you will attract and be attracted to people who lack respect. Those sort of people who believe that they're somehow entitled, and those who take more than is yours to give. Now it's important to acknowledge that we all heal on our own timeline. And when you're ready to acknowledge and to heal your wounds, you begin changing, learning how to love and honor yourself. If your partner just so happens to be in a similar place in their life, then the two of you can grow together, supporting one another through the journey, developing a healthier and closer relationship. And that is a beautiful unfolding. But if your partner is not on that path, if they're not ready, willing, and able to do their work, if they're not ready to take a hard look at themselves and be brutally honest with what they find there, then you may experience backlash as you further engage in your own healing work. They will begin feeling you growing and changing, and it terrifies them. You're growing and changing in ways that they don't understand, and they no longer know how to navigate this relationship because you've changed the rules all of a sudden, and it scares them to death. Their trauma responses, such as love bombing, may intensify until you are finally at a point where you just can't do it anymore and you are ready to walk away. Now, if you feel stuck, if you haven't walked away yet, but you're exhausted from all the internal fighting and chaos within yourself, and if you're asking yourself, where do I start? How do I even begin to change this? Okay, the first step is awareness. It's recognizing the patterns, taking a step back, reflecting on past relationships. Do you see any common threads? Understanding is a powerful first step toward healing. Have your past relationships been like your current one? Remember from our beginning of this video, sometimes we can think that we have identified the patterns, we've broken through the patterns, but then in retrospect, here we are in a relationship or recently out of a relationship that we realized was the same thing, but because it looked different, because it felt different, we thought it was different. So really getting clear and spending time with these sort of questions. Have your past relationships been like your current one? Even if they look different, The shade of lipstick can be different, but is there still a pig under there? So what have you reacted to in the past? Are you reacting the same now? What is the pattern? And what are you no longer willing to accept? How have you changed? How have your internal boundaries changed? And why is that? What helped you change? Are those changes that you're noticing in a healthy direction or in further unhealthy directions? Just noticing and bringing awareness and somehow taking stock of where you are, what you're feeling, and also why. Why have you been able to make these improvements, or why do you think you might have spiraled out in certain situations? And just understanding. It's not about blame, because we all do this stuff, but it's just understanding. Next, it's crucial to address the underlying trauma. It might involve trauma recovery coaching. It might involve some sort of training, or it can involve any sort of self-help that works for you. But it involves whatever it takes for you to begin increasing your awareness and your understanding of what you have experienced and how it has impacted you. It's getting to know your wounds, where they originated from, the messages that those wounds are sharing, and the guidance that they're offering. This is where deep healing happens. Healthy relationships start with the relationship that you have with you, with yourself, how you feel about yourself, how you emotionally treat yourself. Healing these wounds can help you shift your internal beliefs and open yourself up to healthy relationship dynamics, first with you and then with others. Okay, now, when you start on this journey, it can be so hard, and we can be so hard on ourselves. We can start out feeling riddled with shame, blaming and judging ourselves harshly for the choices that we've made, the patterns we've been stuck in, and the people that we have hurt. One vital aspect of this journey is self-compassion. It's easy to blame yourself for making the same mistakes, but remember, these patterns were formed as survival mechanisms, and most often they were formed in early childhood in some way. Then you've just carried them with you because as a very young child, it worked. They worked in that moment, and so you latched onto that thing that helped you, and here you are as an adult trying to do the same types of things. So just be kind to yourself and gentle as you navigate this healing process. I want to talk about boundaries. To get started with your healing, healthy boundaries are needed. Set healthy boundaries for yourself and take time to recognize red flags. It is of utmost importance to listen to what your intuition tells you. Your soul knows what it needs. Trauma not only disconnects us from other people, it disconnects us from ourselves. It teaches us not to listen to our gut. It teaches us not to trust ourselves. This is why you feel you never see it coming. There could be a big red flag smacking you in the face, but you're unable to see it because trauma has taught you to not trust yourself. Trauma has likely also taught you to not be embodied, to not be present. We can spend a lot of time in the past, in depression, or in the future, in anxiety, but not embodied and not present. And so when we're not here, we can't see it coming. So you walk into the fire and get burned again and again and again. Those are the blind spot behaviors I mentioned. So trust yourself. Your soul is sending you a warning or a box of red warnings, and that is something you want to pay attention to. Red flags are not to be entertained. They are not to be dismissed or minimized or excused away. These are warning signs from your soul to stay away from what appears to be healthy, but is in fact pain waiting to strike. And that strike is most likely another person's trauma response, like the love bombing I was just talking about. Take the time to evaluate the messages that are being sent and rest in what you truly feel is best. Oftentimes we find ourselves in another toxic relationship that maybe we didn't recognize it was a toxic relationship because we see the pain that our loved one is struggling with. And you may be taking on the blame, telling yourself that it's all my fault that they feel the way they do. I'll be nicer. I will love them in every way I can to make them happy and show them what an amazing person they are. And at some point, they'll believe it, and they will heal their trauma wounds. At some point, they will have done enough of their inner work, and we will be able to be in a good place. Stop making excuses. Stop giving them the benefit of the doubt. Just because you see someone's pain does not mean they get to beat you up with it. It is your responsibility to commit to your healing, to choosing how you behave, and it is their responsibility to do the same. But it is not your responsibility to wait for them. We can never determine someone else's timeline. We get to choose to honor ourselves right now, this second, and to not allow someone to cross our boundaries out of their pain. The more chances you give someone, the less respect they have for you, the less respect you have for yourself. They ignore the standards that you set because they know that they know through experience that you always give them another chance. And so they expect that you always will give them another chance. They're not afraid of losing you. They take advantage. They take you for granted. They know that no matter what, you're not walking away because, well, you haven't yet. And they get comfortable depending on your repeated forgiveness. It's important that you see them for who they are, and their actions tell you exactly who they are or where they are on their journey. An unhealed person who's not yet ready to invest in themselves. If they are unable to invest in themselves, then they are unable to invest in a healthy relationship, because remember, we cannot have a healthy relationship until we have a healthy relationship with ourselves first. It always starts at home. Right now, you may be feeling trapped, confused, overwhelmed. Breaking these patterns is not easy, but it is absolutely possible and necessary for your own personal health and happiness. By becoming aware, addressing the trauma, practicing self-compassion, understanding your needs, honoring them, and setting boundaries with yourself and with external relationships, you can create the space for healthier, more fulfilling relationships. And you absolutely deserve that. It's important that you honor yourself first and serve yourself well. Understanding your needs and having boundaries to honor those needs are key. Standing in those boundaries, those that do not accept them will see their way out the door. Healing your trauma wounds gives you the strength and peace of mind that you need to be able to honor yourself. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you find this video helpful. And if so, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content on healing and personal growth. And remember, you are not alone on this journey. Until next time, take care.